It's almost showtime. Ooh.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We're here with Chris Frantz and also with Bob Boilen. And we are really excited. And before we get started, I just have a few quick housekeeping notes for you guys. The first is, if you have a question, we ask that you please put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. The final 20 minutes or so of our event tonight is going to be dedicated to your questions. We're going to try to get to as many of those as we can. Just please put them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. That would just really help us out. The second thing I'd like to draw your attention to is I just put in the chat a link to purchase Remain in Love. We really encourage everyone to purchase a copy tonight. It's got an amazing cover and it's a great book, and it helps out our author, and it also helps out Politics and Prose. So that's a great way to support. And with that out of the way, it is my honor to introduce Chris Frantz, the Politics and Prose Live. He is an acclaimed musician, drummer, and producer who rose to fame as a member of the Talking Heads and later the Tom Tom Club, which he founded with his wife and fellow Talking Head, Tina Weymouth. Remain in Love is Frantz's first book, and it details the early years of the Talking Heads, their life on the road, and its complicated relationship with frontman David Byrne, among other things. The book is a snapshot of the vibrant 70s and 80s music scene, and is sprinkled with appearances by legendary figures like Lou Reed, the Ramones, Debbie Harry, and Andy Warhol. And the book is also a love story chronicling his 42-year-old marriage and creative partnership to Weymouth. Frantz will be in conversation tonight with Bob Boilen, creator and host of NPR's All Songs Considered and Tiny Desk Concert. So, Chris and Bob, the screen is yours.
Thank you, my friend. Welcome, everybody.
Hi,
I'm thrilled. Hey, Chris, it's really great to see you again.
Yeah.
And thank you for being in this Politics and Prose event, everybody. Support your local bookstores now more than ever. It's so damn important. And Chris, I love the stories in your book. We have a lot to cover, but I wanted to start at the place where you go to the Rhode Island School of Design. You go there to be an artist. Things took a turn and you wound up with a band.
Yeah. Well, you know, I played drums since, well, I think I started drums when I was in the 4th grade. I'm not sure how.
That would be 9 years old, roughly.
Yeah. Okay. That's when I started. Thank you. And I love to play the drums, and I thought, you know, this is really cool. I particularly liked marching in parades and doing the performances in the school, you know, and it's very exciting to me. And but as I got a little older, I became interested in the visual arts, painting in particular, drawing and painting. And I had a very fortunate experience in having a great painting teacher, studio art teacher in high school, who said, Chris, I think you should go to the Rhode Island School of Design. And it made me very happy because I didn't really want to be a banker or a lawyer or
Although I bet your parents would have been more thrilled than you saying, I'm going to be an artist.
Yeah. They were like, Chris, how will you support yourself? And I didn't know what to say because, you know, being an artist, it's not easy. But my teacher, David Miller, who's a great painter to this day, by the way, said, but Mr. and Mrs. Frantz, the Rhode Island School of Design is the Harvard of art schools. And my dad had gone to Harvard Law School. So he said, oh, it's the Harvard of law schools. Well, maybe Chris could go there. Maybe that. And so we visited the school, and my dad loved it as much as I did. And I ended up there, and that's where I eventually met Tina.
And to be a visual artist then,
Yeah, I was going to be a visual artist, and one thing led to another, and I started missing playing drums. For the first year I was at RISD, I didn't have any drums at all. But my second year, I really started to miss playing a lot. And so I asked my dad, Dad, could you bring the drums up to RISD? And so he packed them into the back of his family station wagon and drove them, whatever it is, 700 miles up to Providence. He was really a good guy that way.
And you started playing with, because art schools are going to have musicians. I mean, that's the nature of beast.
Yeah.
So
most of them were not. Most of the other musicians were kind of folky types or Grateful Dead heads. But I found a few guys, one of whom was David Byrne. And would you like to hear that story of how?
Yeah, you must tell us how you met.
Well, David was in the same class as me our first year there. And he was, but I didn't share any classes with him. So I never really got to know him. I saw him around campus though, because he had a big Rasputin beard and he had, he cut his own hair. So it was like really choppy and uneven, kind of short. And in those days, everybody had longish hair, 1970, you know.
And David was what, a guitar player?
Well, he was playing, he had a duet band, a duo with a friend named Mark Kehoe, who went by the name of Walter Kapusta. That was his stage name. And Walter Kapusta played the accordion. And David played acoustic guitar, but mostly violin. And they would stand outside the RISD refectory, which was what they called the dining hall, and play songs like Pennies from Heaven and stuff like that. Sort of badly, but in a very entertaining way, you know, like so bad it was good type of thing. And they would pass the hat, you know. And but I never really got to know David until the following year. By then he had, no, actually it was 2 years later. He had dropped out of RISD and sort of traveled around the country. And then he came back and he was hanging out, lurking in the shadows of the Rhode Island School of Design. And he was
not as a student, right? I mean, just literally lurking.
Literally lurking. And but we had many mutual friends. And one of these mutual friends, again, it was Mark Kehoe, also known as Walter Kapusta, was making a student film about his girlfriend getting run over by a car. And he came to me and he said, Chris, I know you play drums. Do you think you could help me with the soundtrack? You know, play something really cacophonous and dissonant and, you know, threatening sounding. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And I said, meet me at Tina Weymouth's carriage house. And I gave him the address because that Tina, my future bride, was nice enough to let me keep my drums at her place, which was right next to the tennis courts at Brown University. And there was a lot of noise there with the, you know, the tennis balls going back and forth and people hooting and hollering and stuff. So nobody ever complained about the noise of my drums there, unlike my apartment.
And so you get together and you make cacophonous sounds together?
So I met Mark there and he said, do you mind if I bring a guitarist friend of mine to join you? And I said, of course not, that'd be great. And so David Byrne came walking in. And by this time, he no longer had the Rasputin beard, and he had bleached blonde hair, which he actually bleached with Clorox, and it was really white. But his eyebrows were really black, and his 5 o'clock shadow was really black, and so he had quite a look going on. And David came in, and he had a Fender guitar covered with leopard skin contact paper.
Quite a character.
So it was really cool, man. And we did the thing for Mark. We did the crescendoing, dissonant, cacophonous music, and then we faded it out. And I think we got it in the first take. Mark said, "Oh, that's great." And I turned to David and I said, "That was fun, David. You know what? I'm thinking of starting a little band here at school, you know, like an art school band to entertain our friends and to play at parties and things like that. Nothing serious, just for fun. Would you care to be involved?" And David said, "I guess so." And we started a little band along with two other good friends called the Artistics.
Of course.
And I actually had invited Tina to be in the Artistics. I knew that she played guitar, like sort of folk guitar, and she had played flute. And but most of all, I knew that she had a great, wonderful sense of rhythm from dancing with her. And I knew that she shared a similar aesthetic to David and I when it came to music. Like we liked the same types of things, everything from Velvet Underground to the latest on Soul Train, you know. So Tina said, "No, I don't think that's such a great idea. You go ahead. I'll drive your drums around for you in my car and stuff. But being in a band is a guy thing." And
which more or less that was the unfortunate truth of the time. You know,
yeah,
much of the music, not all, but much of the
yeah,
music out there.
yeah. She was right. You know, it was a guy thing, a boys' club, you might say. But she changed that eventually. But we'll get to that. That's further down the line. When
You bet. I want to give people an idea of the sense of the book and the storytelling and some of the beginning of the book itself. For those who haven't read it, we'll give them a flavor of what they're in for when they get this book. Because you want to, this will be the only reading I think we'll do. But
yeah, I'd be
give us a
happy
little.
to. This chapter is called "The Best Seat in the House." It's chapter 1. Are you ready, Bob?
I'm ready.
Okay. Or I should say, are we rolling, Bob? Okay. On December 17th, 1980, at the Palace Sport, also known as Pala EUR Arena in Rome, Italy, at 2100 hours, Talking Heads took the stage. The support band, a well-known two-tone ska band called the Selector, had warmed up the audience to a maniacal point, and when I ran up the huge metal ramp to the stage and took my seat on the drum riser behind my Mojave red Rogers drum kit and looked out at the many thousands of fans, I knew that I had the best seat in the house. In the cold gray light of the arena, the mass of mostly young Italian men was swaying, pulsating, and screaming like one huge wild beast. The air was warm and damp and thick with cigarette smoke. The crowd was so overwhelmingly loud that we in the band were taken aback. We'd been touring the world to packed houses everywhere, but no audience compared to this one for its sheer animal intensity. It was almost frightening, like a modern version of the mob in the ancient times of the Colosseum. From my drummer's throne, that's what they call it, I waited for Tina Weymouth, Jerry Harrison, and David Byrne to strap on their guitars and signal each other that we were ready to rock. Our friend, guitar hero Adrian Ballou, was joining us as well. Tina, looking exceptionally fine in a dress she had made herself, a strapless white sheath with a slit on the side all the way up to the top of her thigh, gave her shiny blonde hair a toss, and played boom, 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 boom. Her familiar introduction to Psycho Killer set off a roar from the audience so loud that I had to ask the monitor man to turn up my monitor so that I could hear the band. This was the next to the last show of the Remain in Light European tour, and it was going to be a doozy. One by one, we were joined on stage by the phenomenal Steve Scales on percussion, the wonderful keyboard wizard Bernie Worrell, the gorgeously soulful Dolette McDonald on vocals, and the body-rocking additional bass of Busta Cherry Jones. Our energy level was a good match for the audience. This is the set we played. Psycho Killer, Warning Sign, Stay Hungry, Cities, E Zimbra, Drugs, Once in a Lifetime, Animals, Houses in Motion, Born Under Punches, The Heat Goes On, Cross-Eyed and Painless, Life During Wartime. And then we left the stage and came back for encore number 1, Take Me to the River. Encore number 2, The Great Curve.
That's awesome. I want to, just, if it's okay, stop you there, because I know time-wise, if we want to, we got a long story to go with.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the songwriting and Psycho Killer, the dum 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 that you just did there. Talk about, I mean, that's one of the earlier tunes. Talk about how that came together and how you worked together.
Well, Psycho Killer was so much fun because it was, well, for many reasons, but one of the main reasons was it was the first song we ever wrote together, worked on together. At this point in time, it was 1973, and Tina and I were sharing a painting studio at the Rhode Island School of Design. We were seniors, and you were expected, if you were a painting major, you were expected to work on a series of paintings all year long. And then at the end of the year, you would have a show in the student gallery. And it was a lot of fun. But so we were working on our paintings, and there's a knock on the door, and it was David Byrne. And I said, "Come on in, David." And he had his acoustic guitar, which had splatters of paint on it and everything. And he came in and he said, "I've got this song I'm working on. It's kind of in the spirit of Alice Cooper." Now, you know, Alice Cooper was really big at the time. I think he had a #1 album at that time with $1 Billion Babies. And his whole shtick was very tongue-in-cheek. So anyway, David said, "I've got this song. It's called Psycho Killer." And we're like, whoa. And he played us the first verse. He had the first verse, and he had most of the chorus together. But he said, "I want to write the bridge in a foreign language because I want it to sort of signify a psychotic, you know, what do you call it? Dysfunction or something like that. Like suddenly the song changes languages in the middle." And Tina, being fluent in French because her mother was from France and spoke French in the house all the time, Tina volunteered to write it in French, which she did. She just dropped what she was doing, sat down and wrote it. And in what I've been told since is very elegant and classical French from the era of Napoleon, which is basically the way, you know, well-educated people from her parents' generation spoke. It's not how kids in France speak today. You know,
and the words that she wrote, and how did that work with? I don't know my
well,
French, so I translate
Ce
too.
qu'elle a dit ce soir, what she did that night what she said that night, what I did that night made me realize I must lance forward to a great moment of glory. It's like completely crazy talk, but it seemed to work. And David said, "Oh, I like that." And then he needed a couple more verses, and I sort of volunteered, and I wrote actually 3 verses, one of which was later dropped. But by the end of a few hours, we had the essence of a really good song. And I thought to myself, damn, this sounds like so good. It's like the Velvet Underground meets Otis Redding or something like that. And
that's a dream band.
yeah, and we started performing the song with our band, the Artistics, because mostly with the Artistics, we did garage band covers and the Kinks and a little Smokey Robinson and a little Al Green. A heavy dose of Lenny Kaye's Nuggets, songs from that album.
It's amazing how Lenny Kaye then weaves into your life. I want to walk us to the Bowery, if we can, and
okay,
in the middle 1970s. You and Tina go to live there. You wind up not far from a place not well known at the time called CBGB.
Yeah.
And paint us a picture of the Bowery, and then talk about the loft that the 3 of you. Right now, you're still a 3-piece. Jerry Harrison's not in the band.
We weren't even a 3-piece yet. We were a 2-piece.
Okay, keep going.
Tina had still not agreed to join the band. She was planning on becoming a painter, but she was my girlfriend. So she moved together. We moved to New York, and the first night I was there, I went to visit a painter friend of mine named Jamie Dalgleish. And Jamie had a loft at 52 Bond Street, which was just catty corner across the Bowery from this place he told me about. He said, Chris, I know you're interested in music and rock and roll and stuff, and there's something going on at that club across the road there, across the street. It's called CBGBs. I think you should check it out. I said, oh, cool. I will check it out. And I went that very night. And I think it was a Wednesday. I walked in, there was nobody there, like nobody, but there was a bartender. And I asked for a bottle of Rolling Rock beer. And I'm drinking my Rolling Rock, and suddenly I hear a pool game, like the crashing of pool balls going on in the very back of the club. So I walked back there, tripping over the uneven floor with my bottle of Rolling Rock, and there was 4 guys shooting pool. One of them, I found out later, he was Arturo Vega, who was the graphic designer and lighting designer for the Ramones. Huh. But he was, at the time, he was dressed in a silver sharkskin suit with like a purple shirt and I think a black tie. And his hair was like 1/8 of an inch long all over, like what we call a buzz cut. And he had these Elvis Presley shades, like from the late Elvis, those big silver sunglasses he would wear. And I said, oh, hi, anything going on with music tonight? And he said, no, man, not tonight, but come back on the weekend. The Ramones will be here. They're great. In a very heavy Mexican accent. And I thought to myself, oh, the Ramones, a Mexican band. Oh, interesting. So I came back on the weekend. I saw the Ramones. They were unbelievable. They were, to me, like a conceptual art project in the rough. They were still pretty unpolished. In fact, they would stop in the middle of a song and argue with each other. Like Dee Dee would say, no, Johnny, I don't want to play. I don't want to go down to the basement. I want to play. I don't want to walk around with you. And was
what
so
year are we-
brilliant.
What year are we talking now? We're 75
We're
or
talking
6?
about 1974.
4.
1974. And then I went back the next weekend, and there was a band called Television. And then the weekend after that, there was a person called Patti Smith, who was at that time accompanied only by Lenny Kaye on guitar.
Who is the fellow we were talking about and who put
Yeah.
the Nuggets compilation together, which is,
Yes,
for those who don't know, is a compilation of just amazing little bands all over the country in a psychedelic era. And
yeah, he called it artifacts from the first psychedelic era.
right.
Yeah.
And that record turned out to be a life changer for so many people.
Yes, indeed. It
Yeah.
really was. And I think it still is, you know,
Yeah.
when people hear it, they're like, whoa, because those hits, they were all singles and they were all, you know, really great. So anyway, then the next time I went to CBGBs, I saw an early incarnation of Blondie called they called it The Angel and the Snake. I guess Debbie was the angel and Chris Stein was the snake. And so I thought, wow, man, this is perfect. This is going to be like the Cavern Club or the Star Club was for the Beatles. This is a place where eventually we can get a gig here and we can, you know, blow people's minds.
And the thing is that you paint the picture of a club, and we all have these ideas of clubs that we, well, not right now, but go to, that are these nice places with great sound, and you know, just the Bowery was just a hellhole, right? And CBGB's was no glorious place, and there weren't that many people coming, right?
CBGB's was a dump, and it was a former Hells Angels bar. In fact, the Hells Angels would still come in the early days and hang on the bar and sort of, you know, just hang out, be threatening, you know. They never really caused any real harm, but they were kind of threatening looking, especially one guy that wore like a bear's head on the top of his own head.
And all great early clubs have a memorable smell.
Yes. This smell at CBGB's, I like to say, was a combination of beer, dog dew, roach spray, and Chanel No. 5. And it was a rich melange. And so anyway, it became the hangout. A great thing very early on that Hilly decided to do.
Hilly Crystal, yeah.
Hilly Crystal, the owner of CBGB's, he would allow, if you had ever performed there, or if you were just a regular, and he got to know the look of your face, he would let you in for free. And so all these musicians started hanging out there, and it was like a clubhouse for these young musicians. Some of them even not so young, like John Cale, for example. But it was like an incubator where these bands could hone their stagecraft and work on the songs that they'd written and eventually springboard out into the universe.
You wrote in the book something that really struck me, which was when you all started getting together and at the loft near CBGB, and you wrote that you thought you had something new to offer to the world, and you set out to make that happen. What was it that you imagined? Is it possible to describe that?
Could you just, you said, I thought what? I'm sorry.
You wrote in the book that the three of you thought you had something as a band to offer to the world, and that you set about to do just that. And I was just wondering, what was it that you imagined? Because it's hard to imagine the future that lay ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, we imagined that, what was really happening in New York at that time, in the downtown scene, was the New York Dolls. The New York Dolls were kind of the kings, and they were on the verge of breaking up, actually, because things hadn't been going so great
And Queen
for them. But so you still had a lot of bands wearing like costumes and makeup, and a lot of hairspray in their hair and platform boots.
And a lot of hair.
Yeah, a lot of hair, and they played many of these. Well, a lot of people were still emulating like the Rolling Stones and the Who, and great bands, great classic rock bands. But we thought, with Talking Heads, we thought we got to come from another angle, and there's no way we're going to beat the New York Dolls or the Rolling Stones at their game. We've got to have a different kind of shtick. And so our shtick was that we just dressed like everyday students, or perhaps interns at an architectural firm, something like that. And we looked, some people said we looked preppy, other people said we looked nerdy. But when we got up on stage and played, they said, "You sound herky-jerky." I'm still not exactly sure what herky-jerky means, but another person said, "You sound like you came out of the Twilight Zone." And I like that.
It was such a contrast as someone who went to the not
Yeah.
the 74
And,
shows, but the early shows.
David was playing guitar, of course, and he played very trebly, sort of almost delicate riffs on the guitar that no power chords or anything like that. It was almost like, even in the early days, almost like African high life, or maybe a little bit of the Ventures.
Yeah, it had the melody and the high trebly sound.
Yeah, and Tina, by this time, Tina had decided to join the band and had purchased a beautiful Fender Precision on layaway. We had so little money, really, that she was putting $5, unbeknownst to David and I, she's putting $5 a week from her paycheck on this bass guitar. I think it was sold to her by Fred Smith from Television,
Oh, wow.
bass player from Television. He worked at a store called We Buy Guitars up on 48th Street. Anyway, it was a great guitar. I think it's a 63.
Still have it?
Yeah, she still has it.
Maybe back there.
It's over in our studio.
Awesome.
But Tina's style was not based on Chuck Berry riffs and the blues, like so much rock and roll had been.
Yeah.
It was more classical in its sound and approach, and it was very different sounding from what you would expect from a bass player in those days. So, and I was doing my thing on the drums, doing my best to, not speed up or slow down. And together we had a very unique, and if I do say so, or if I may say so, interesting chemistry. And it just took off. I mean, the first time we played, we opened for the Ramones. I walked into CBGBs a couple days before and asked Hilly if we could audition. Hilly was so nice. He said, "Well," he had a very deep voice. "Well, I suppose I could put you on in front of the Ramones on Thursday night. And then if it works out well, you can play with them on the weekend." And I said, "Oh, cool. All right." And so we did it, and we passed the audition. I heard Johnny Ramone say to Hilly, "Yeah, they suck. They're going to make us look good. They can open for us."
And you famously went out on tour with them in Europe, and
yes,
there's so much to go through. We're a half hour, 35 minutes in this conversation. In 10 or 15, in 10 minutes or so, I want to bring people's questions from the audience in. So just a reminder, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom, not the chat room, but the Q&A. If you want to ask questions, I'll take a peek at that and start asking questions. We have so much that's in this book I wanted to get to, but I do want to get to at least give people a sense of what it was like to record a record, right? And for me, well, I love all your records. More Songs was lit me on fire, although the first record did too. But
Yeah.
can we just talk about working on that record and
Sure.
get people an idea of how you made songs together? And at this point, you worked with Brian Eno.
Yes, and by this time, Jerry Harrison was in the band.
Yeah.
Jerry came to us from the Modern Lovers, who had broken up, and
Whose music you admired.
We greatly admired the Modern Lovers, and Jerry worked out beautifully because he really enhanced the sound, and he got right into it, and he knew what to play and what not to play, and it was perfect. It worked out very well. But how we developed songs was we sat, the four of us, in a room and just improvised and jammed. And sometimes David would have a particular direction he wanted to go in, like he would start off the jam. Other times, Tina and I would start it off. And we were never ever presented until True Stories. We were never presented with demos that we were told, this is the song we're going to play. It was always something we had to create, and we got pretty good at it. But you know, it's so funny. We didn't even have a tape recorder. If we got a couple of parts working well together, we had to remember it in our heads for the next day, you know, which somehow we did. It's crazy. But I think David had a little, they called them dictaphones, where you could talk into it.
Right, the little micro cassette
And he would
things.
sometimes sing a little something into his dictaphone to remember, but we didn't have a proper tape recorder yet. We went down to Compass Point at the invitation of Chris Blackwell of Island Records. He had a new studio in the Bahamas called Compass Point Studios that he had built because there was, you know, he's from Jamaica, and he was really working hard on Bob Marley to bring Bob Marley to the world. But there was all this political strife and frankly shooting going on in Jamaica. So he decided, well, I'm going to move my operation over to the Bahamas where there's less, you know, murder going on. And Talking Heads had quite a buzz about us at that time. We're talking about late 1977. And he said to our manager, who was a friend of his, why don't the Heads come down and make a record here? They can be the first band to record here, and I'll give them a reduced rate. and you know, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so that sounded pretty good to us. And we had just met Brian Eno in London, where we were touring with the Ramones again.
Did he come see you on at a gig? Is that?
Yes, he came to a Talking Heads solo gig that we did at a place called the Rock Garden in Covent Garden, London. He came with John Cale, and he was keenly interested. And I remember John Cale saying to him in the dressing room after the show, "They're mine, you bugger, get out of here." But
and you would think that your love for the Velvet Underground, you might have gone, for those who don't know, John Cale was a member of the band. And
we have enormous respect for John Cale, but we knew him from hanging at CBGBs when he was performing with his own band and also producing Patti Smith's Horses. So we knew John and we liked him a lot, but we felt that Brian Eno would be a better fit for us.
So what did Brian bring out of you? Because in working
Well,
with someone like that?
the first album was easy for Brian because we had, I mean, more songs about buildings and food, which is in fact our second album, was easy for him because we had been touring all those songs, playing them live. We had our shit together, man. And all he had to do was like set up the mics and press record, and we went. But he did do some cool things. He brought a little briefcase-sized synthesizer that he had, no keyboard on it or anything, just these little pegs that you pull in and out.
The EMS?
Yeah,
yeah,
I believe so. And he would treat various instruments, particularly the drums. And another great thing that he did was we decided to record "Take Me to the River," the great Al Green song. And he said, we had been playing it like Al Green did, a kind of up tempo. And, a lot of in the punk days, you pretty much had to play up tempo songs. Those kids, they didn't want to hear no ballads or anything. So he said, "Take Me to the River" sounds great, but what if we slow it down so much that you almost practically can't play it, like that slow? And we said, okay, we'll try it. And we tried it, and damn, it sounded really good. All that space between the notes and like the snare drum hits, and it just sounded great. Like it was, and with his treatments on the drums and also on the bass, it sounded like it was underwater or something. And we had a wonderful experience with Brian, and we ended up doing 2 more records with him after that.
I'm going to take some questions. So everybody who wants to start putting questions in the Q&A, please go ahead and do that. I was surprised when I read that David had gone off to do a solo record at some point, and you all you and Tina had about $2,000, you were told, in your bank account. You needed to do something, right?
Yes.
You couldn't just be sitting around.
That's right. Our accountant said, "Chris and Tina, you better do something or you're going to be broke."
Which is amazing to me for someone who thought you were a popular band.
Well, we had just done that big Remain in Light tour, and it was a wonderful tour, and it was a huge success, but it was not a moneymaker because we had about 18 people on the road or something like that. Yeah. And with hotels and airfare and everything else per diem, it adds up. So at the end of the tour, there was not much money left. So our accountant said, "This is $2,000 is not enough to support your lifestyle." So again, our manager went to Chris Blackwell and said, "Chris and Tina are interested in doing a record. What do you think?" And Chris Blackwell said, "Well, I appreciate the value of a good rhythm section. So tell Chris and Tina to come down to Compass Point and cut a single. And if I like the single, then they can do a whole album." And so that's what we did. The first single was "Wordy Rapping Hood," and it went to #1 and it went to top 10 in 7 countries in Europe, maybe more. Went to #1 in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and Mexico. You can sell a lot of records down in Mexico.
And maybe more successful in ways than money-wise than Talking Heads.
Well, we were never about quantity, we were about quality. But sure. If I had to go by the chart positions and how many records we actually sold, yes, we did. Well, when Genius of Love came out in the United States, finally Seymour Stein of Sire Records woke up and said, "Oh my God, Chris and Tina have written a hit. So he finally released it, and it just exploded in the, what we call now the urban market, but also the dance market. Like all the DJs at the Mud Club and Danceteria and Paradise Garage, they loved Genius of Love. And it basically sold about 10 times as many as any Talking Heads record had sold up to that point. Later on, with Talking Heads, we started getting more and more popular, you might say. But
how about if I ask a couple questions from our audience?
Sure.
One of them is very simple, which is, how do I get an autographed copy of your book? So,
where do you live? I'll come over.
This is Jen. I guess maybe we can figure that out and type an answer or something. But
what I've been doing is I have these very nice book plates that go inside the book that will stick in, and I can sign one and send it to you, or send it to Politics and Prose, and they can put it into your book for you, something like that.
Awesome. Abad wanted to know your drumming influences growing up, and your songwriting skills. What informed your drumming?
Ringo and Charlie Watts were my first big influences, and also a guy named Gene Krupa, who was my parents' generation, but one of the great big band drummers of all time. He was a super nice guy too. But then I discovered soul music. So the drummers for James Brown, the drummers for Motown, Al Jackson Jr., the drummer from Booker T and the MGs, and later Al Green, was perhaps my favorite of all time. And there was a time even when I dug Ginger Baker, with all those fills and crazy polyrhythms that he was into.
I saw him live in 1969 in Baltimore, and I just blew my mind. And the next day, in the reviews in the paper, someone said it sounded like he was tripping through a lumber yard. But wow, that was just he was an amazing drummer.
Well, I met Ginger once.
Awesome.
And I said, it was at a Roy Orbison, a benefit for the homeless in the name of Roy Orbison. And we had performed that night, and Ginger Baker was in the VIP tent after the show. And I said, "Hi, Ginger, how are you?" And he said, "F off."
That sounds about right.
That was the end of my conversation with Ginger.
Other musicians, people are asking, how is it working? Doug the Spiral want to know, how is it working with Johnny Marr? Hi, Doug, by the way.
Hey, Doug. Johnny Marr was a great pleasure. He's a sweetheart, a really nice young guy. We worked with him on our last album, the album called Naked, which we recorded in Paris. And Steve Lillywhite was the producer, and Steve had worked with Johnny Marr. And he said, "I think you should get Johnny Marr to come over here and add some 12 string. We said, "Okay, sure." And, with Talking Heads, we were always kind of frugal, and we carried our own gear. I mean, not when we got bigger on tour and stuff, but when we were going into the studio, we just had our own. We didn't have any crew or anything. We just took care of our own gear, and we set everything up ourselves. And Johnny arrived, and he had his last name is Rogan. He was the guitar tech for Pete Townsend, Keith Richards, he was like the world's most famous guitar tech. And Johnny had him, and I thought, oh wow, Rogan's in the room. I guess that means we've finally hit the big time.
Yeah, there are a couple of people ask about when did it feel like you made it? Well, There's certainly one moment.
It felt like I made it the first time I played CBGBs, because that was my dream, you know, is to be in a cool sort of underground rock band, and we did that.
Michael Malone says, "Hi, Chris. I know you're a big fan of Grace Jones and the B-52s. Do you see any similarities between all your music, and do you feel you guys influenced each other?" And again, Michael says, "Great hearing you tonight. Can't wait to read the book."
I don't think I ever influenced Grace Jones, but listening to her band was the band she put together, Chris Blackwell put together for her at Compass Point, called the Compass Point All-Stars. Was Sly and Robbie on drums and bass, and Barry Reynolds, a British guy, on guitar, Wally Badarou, extraordinary keyboard player from Paris, originally from Nigeria, but born in, rather raised in Paris, and who else? Sticky Thompson, one of the wildest percussionists of all time from Jamaica.
Huh.
And then she had a guy named Mao, who was a Jamaican Chinese fellow who looked exactly like Chairman Mao. So they called him Mao. And, you know, Sly and Robbie were a big influence on us, because they, I think particularly on Tina's bass playing, Robbie showed her some, you know, how to really get a nice round, low sound, and a funky sound. Who was the B-52s?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
yeah.
We introduced the B-52s to Chris Blackwell, and we introduced them to our manager in Washington, D.C. at the Corcoran. That show they did with the Urban Verbs that was so fabulous.
And for those who don't know, the Urban Verbs is the DC band that changed my life. Your brother is the singer of that band.
Yeah.
And that evening at the Corcoran New Year's Eve party was
but
remarkable.
We did a lot of work with the B-52s. Eventually, we had the same management, and we toured together all over the world. And we also introduced them to Chris Blackwell, and he became their record company and record producer. And I don't think they influenced Talking Heads so much, but their records did influence us with Tom Tom Club, because we loved the humor and the zaniness of their songs, and the you know, the beautiful female vocals, and of course Fred's vocals are also very beautiful. And
one of a kind.
We became quite friendly, and there was a nice give and take between us and the B-52s.
Yeah. Heather McDonald wanted to know what inspires you now. Do you still create beats and songs?
You know what I like that I just heard yesterday for the first time is, how do you know how to pronounce this band, because I think they've done your Tiny Desk concert, Khruangbin?
Yes, Khruangbin. They're a band from Houston.
Their latest song is very reminiscent of Tom Tom Club to me.
Oh, I can hear that.
When I heard them, I thought, wow, these guys, this is so cool, because it's very sparse and sort of sensuous, and the drummer is real cool but laid back.
He's good. Yeah.
So I love them. I will also say that I'm amazed by the new Bob Dylan album and how good it is.
That was a nice surprise this year.
I wasn't expecting that
Nope.
from him at all, but I'm really glad he did it. It's like somebody said he hadn't done a new album for 8 years, and it probably took him 8 years to write this one. It's that good. It's really something.
Is there any chance someone wants to know of more Tom Tom Club records? That's from Kathleen Carey.
Definitely a chance. In fact, we were planning some secret gigs that were going to happen last spring in the month of April, and then, you know, the virus came, and no gigs for nobody. So maybe when all this business calms down, this virus, maybe we can go out and do some more shows.
Well, that leads me to Daniel Curtis's question, which he says, can we get a Tiny Desk concert organized? And and for those who don't know, Tom Tom Club, it's almost 10 years now, came and did
Yeah.
an incredible Tiny Desk concert. So if you haven't seen that, do that. But you're welcome and invited if you get something new up and running.
Oh, good.
But
Back by popular demand.
exactly. But you want to tell people what that experience was like? Some people might want to know.
Doing the Tiny Desk show?
Yeah.
Well, we drove down to Washington, D.C. from Connecticut, I think, and got stuck in traffic, but we managed to get there on time. And it was I'd never been to the NPR building before. You have security there, and we got
playing in an office in the daytime, and what's that?
Yeah, we
got that feel like?
Security, and we went up to your office, and people were so nice. There was a lot of people there, and it was really nice. And your desk was very neat.
That's surprising.
Plenty of sunshine.
Yeah.
Plenty of sunshine in the room, and we just did our thing. I think we played Wordy Rapping Hood and Genius of Love, and then we played a Zydeco song.
Yes.
That we had covered called Only the Strong Survive.
Do you remember who the guy who played the washboard was?
Yeah, that's Mystic Bowie, the Jamaican guy.
He was amazing, and so was the accordion player.
Mystic was our additional singer and kind of hype man on stage, and now he's doing his own thing with his own band, and it's called Talking Dreads, and he does reggae versions of Talking Heads songs, and he also recorded a version of Wordy Rapping Hood with Sly and Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have to wrap it up, but I was just thinking about, there's so much we didn't talk about regarding both bands.
Yeah, this is so much fun.
It really is.
I feel like we're just getting started.
I know. The book is awesome, people. The stories in the book. So there's so much more to uncover. But the one thing that I appreciated in all the things that you guys went through as a band and personality conflicts, and that's just the nature of Beast, is that there was sort of a happy ending. You hadn't played together in 18 years, and you get a phone call, and you're invited. You're inaugurated, or what's the word I'm looking for, into the Rock and Roll Hall, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And you get together and play again. What was it like to have the chemistry happen all over again?
It was so much fun. I wish we had done it more often, but we got together and we rehearsed for 3 days. We had to perform 3 songs and then a version of "Take Me to the River" and in the going out music. The all-star jam at the end where everybody plays in different keys. but
getting back in a room together to rehearse for this thing,
it was really great. And I actually have a videotape of the whole thing, all 3 days. And one day I'll release to the public. but it meant a lot to me, and we were all very happy that on the same night our friends the Ramones were inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was 2 of us from CBGBs that were being inducted that night, and in our first year of eligibility. So that that was pretty cool for us. And Tina had the idea that we should invite Hilly to join us on stage when we got our little statues and made our little speeches. And so Hilly came up And you know, I think it meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to me, because without Hilly Crystal and CBGBs, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
There you go. And advice to musicians who are out in the audience, who are just getting started. What would you say?
My advice is be sure to, whoever you are inspired by, or whoever you get your excitement from musically, make sure you add into that something that's unique unto yourself.
There you go.
Something that can't be copied by other people. And also, if somebody tries to discourage you, tell them to get the hell out of here.
That's beautiful. Chris Frantz, thank you so much for this evening. And
Thank you, Bob.
Remain in love, and please give Tina our love.
I will.
I wish we had more time to talk about that relationship. There's lots in the book about you and Tina.
Yes.
I didn't get to. I wish I had.
You know, it's a great pleasure for me to have this book published. It's been a long time coming, and you know, there's some things that don't need to be said, but there are other things that do need to be said, and they're in this book.
That's awesome. Thank you all. Thank you all for in the room.
Thanks,
and,
everybody.
Be well, my friend.
Cheers, Bob.
Take care.